Hi all, welcome to the Barry Navan Podcast, episode number 2. A central theme of this podcast is taking action on the inner voice suggestions that we all have. My inner voice is prompting me to create a work shirt that inspires me to do my best work. When I think of people who've taken action against their inner voice, there's no better example than a friend of mine, Lou Joseph, who created a company called Alps Meters, which creates high-end ski alpine clothing based up in Boston, Massachusetts. Lou joins us in this conversation where he shares his inspiration and best practical advice on starting a clothing company. Lou, my friend, how are you?
Nice to see you.
And you. Very grateful in sharing your experience and your expertise. You're quite far down the road. Real inspirational product. As I said in the email, I've been cheering you on from the side.
Thank you.
Really inspiring what you've been doing. And it's just a really opportunity to share your knowledge. As I said in the opening introduction, I am embarking on creating a shirt right now. Those details were shared in the introduction. But I really have limited experience with designing and manufacturing clothing, and you're way far down that road. So really I'd like to start with design. So you started a company, you fell in love with this sweater on a trip, and then you brought that back. You tried to figure out a modern version of that. But you were a senior executive with Puma and K-Swiss before that. That was more in the marketing and sales realm there. Mm-hmm. So it'd be interesting to see your design experience up to this point, or was it net new for you when you started Alps Meters?
It wasn't net new, but there were a lot of nuts and bolts that I wasn't particularly familiar with. Particularly at my time at Puma Carrying, I'd always revolved in an orbit with really exceptional designers, folks who are cut out of that specific cloth of trade. I probably knew enough to get the Alps Meters engine running, but was supported from the get-go with friendly people, collaborative folks, and individuals who had a very specific technical design skill. So whereas I had a bit of a spark of inspiration, like every entrepreneur, I've been a lifelong alpinist, skier, discovered some vintage knitwear, which became my choice of garb here in the United States, skiing in South America. I wanted to really try to, and this is hindsight, so it's 2020. Things are a lot more clear now than they were then, but try to just sort of distill in our brand and in the garments that I wanted to create the nostalgia and romance that was represented in that old knitwear product. It was far gone the time when people skied in sweaters, but that classic presentation, the ambiance, the taste level is what I wanted to unpack. I think I was able to communicate enough to my friends in the design trade to build a path for them, but I give full credit to the designers in general as the ones who have really manifested the expression of what was in my head.
For sure. And your first product was a sweater, not too unlike the one that you're wearing right now. I don't think it had a zip, right? The first design that you had.
Yeah, there were a couple of prototypes. Some definitely not market worthy, as you know, coming from the product creation universe. We built a very, very iconic knitted jacket. It was called the shawl collar jacket, and it really distilled a lot of the things that I felt were high taste, were missing the market, were revisiting 200-year-old technologies, the woolen fibers, that repelled water. To my recollection, it had full grain waterproof leather, not a trim that you see within alpine sport often. And then there were a couple of accoutrements, and slowly led to the advent of still one of our best-selling products, which is our Alpine Winter Trouser, which is a woolen herringbone-faced crosshatch suspender kit included ski pant. But it was very, very brick by brick. The first collection at ground zero was hard to describe even as a collection, if you will. It was a semblance of items that indicated where we might go and
Sure.
the potential of what we were trying to achieve.
Yeah. Almost a vision
Yeah.
garment. Yeah. So the first steps, it sounds like you then started sketching out from the aesthetic that you were looking for. You started sketching some preliminary designs, and then you had a network around you then that would help you to manifest that into properly designed. I'm not even sure what the word is, what the formal sketches are in the different sizes, etc.
That's right. Those people are critical, I think, for at least my own personal point of view. I mean, the journey's been a group effort from the get-go, even from competencies and the network and finding helpful people has been absolutely critical to anything that we've achieved to date, and it's still very early. So not a one-man band at all.
Sure. So if you were starting today right now and you had that same sketch and you were like trying to figure out how to manifest that, is it like, what would you do today? Would you reach out? Obviously, you had an existing network with Puma, K-Swiss, you friends in the industry. But for people out there with a similar mindset as myself right now, or starting into this clothing world, is it looking up a some site where you look for talent, if it's a specific design talent site, or just reaching into a network, or how would you recommend starting as a scratch?
Maybe share a quick story. I'll keep it short, but there are definitely a few things that I would have short-circuited. It would have bought me 6 months and less of a migraine at the start. But I had some folks at a large manufacturing outfit that I sold on the idea of starting this alpine sportswear company. I didn't share the size of the company with them, which was 0 at the time. And I put together a slick presentation, and they invited me to Asia. I flew to Asia for a day, tap danced my way through the presentation, and then slowly it came to light that this is a startup without any revenue.
Yeah.
And some of the executives, many of whom I did not know then, cleared out of the room along with a lot of the air. And there was one individual there who was very, very receptive to maybe just the gumption to come over and make the presentation. He took me to lunch, and then he helped to facilitate a manufacturing relationship. I jumped on a plane and went to Taiwan. Had a very, very close friend there, a gentleman named William Wong, who helped to become an adhesive between myself and the factory, and so it went. That relationship didn't scale, and the shortcut that I would have loved to have taken would have found our current product creation partner, a really incredible outfit by the name of Exit 21 Apparel Solutions in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
We stumbled into them via others in our network, searching for a one-stop shop of design, technical development, and sourcing. And these folks are ex-Lululemon, ex-Nike. They come with a really powerhouse pedigree. I hadn't known of them. I hadn't rubbed shoulders at any of them. But if I could go back in time, rather than that, extensive flight to Asia, the trip to Taiwan, the early, very nascent, noisy, call it preliminary factory relationship, I would put that aside and go straight to our new partners on a plane instead of to Asia to Oregon. Just didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And obviously it's a journey, right? They weren't identified to you at that point, right? So it's a case of just stumbling around until you find partners such as that. The company, you said it was Exit 21?
Yes.
So what does a company working with a company like that look like? You bring the designs to them, or are they a full shop, right? They'll help you with design, sizing, materials.
They're a full suite of services. Most importantly, they're fantastic people that understand brand building and early stage bumps and bruises that you take. They have exceptional factory relationships, and through their through their network, through their credibility, through their integrity, smaller companies are able to insert themselves into a series of relationships that probably would not be able to be unlocked otherwise. But really what we do, to keep it very simple, is we tend to act as the creative vision folks, with a big idea for a particular season, the expression that we want to create. We then build very specific documented product briefs, the types of styles we want, the features and benefit sets, references of fashionable styling, material complexion, all of that gets packaged up and imported to the Exit 21 team. And then they are the ones who put pen to paper, look at the technical blueprints, into the factory environment, and then get the prototype engine running.
Got it. And where would a company like Exit 21, where do they start? Are they interested in companies right from the start? Or are they more interested in companies like you, where you've already brought a few garments to market, you're showing some initial potential, you've got some revenue running through the company? Is that the target size a company like that would really start to engage? Or are they right from day zero?
Yeah, these are very, very unique people that don't mind getting wet and sandy at the outset. We were not that far along. In fact, we were experiencing a massive sort of upheaval and turbulence with our manufacturing base, with our development base. It was nearly a full reset. So they're not shy about getting involved early. And the principal there, a gentleman named his name's Eric Sippert. He's kind of an entrepreneur by trade, cut his teeth at Nike, worked in multiple divisions there, lived in Asia, was an executive, helped to build ACG, their all conditions gear, and then was really one of the key cogs in the wheel of Lululemon's founding and scale. So he's seen it all. And, I think most importantly, when I think about the relationship that we have, it ultimately comes down to good people working with good people, the right attitude. From one brand to the next, I would say the journey of making things, or the methods of baking, are not too dissimilar.
Mm-hmm.
And the Exit 21 group has the ability to probably make anything that a founder or an entrepreneur might have in their head. But I think what has made our relationship successful is sort of the intimacy, the shared vision, the reciprocation of challenges that we encounter, challenges that Exit 21 encounters, all relationship based at the end of the day, not transactional, although they're an important engine within our company, but relationships first and foremost.
Yeah, it almost sounds like they're an embedded department.
They are. They surely are. They're a thought partner. I cry on the principal's shoulder all the time. They've been helpful from a financing perspective. The Alps Meters, we would be nowhere without that group. That is for certain.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting. And it's shared principles is obviously an important one as well, right? Because there'll be some companies out there who would look, it's whatever principles you have. Someone would have standards in regards to the kind of materials that they're looking for and the welfare of the employees that are making these garments. Other people would think differently. So aligning of those principles is obviously very important with a vendor such as that.
Absolutely. 100%. Because that trickles down and through every bolted on relationship that Exit 21 has created for us, and vice versa. The principal there, Eric Sippert, is close with our board members. He'll likely become an observer at the board level of our company. It's hard to create things together and not be married in that sense. At least I have found.
Yeah.
So I fully agree with what you described as sort of these principle sets, value sets, making sure that that's tightly wound and aligned.
Yeah.
Key.
Yeah, absolutely. And just out of interest, would you give 100% of that business to Exit 21, or do you also have other vendors as well that you work with?
No,
do you just
there are one-stop shop.
Okay.
We're we're still very, very family oriented. It's unlikely that we would step out of that particular sandbox without their blessing, or it would need to be based on their referral. I think they started this journey with us. They've been at the ground floor. They felt the pain that we have felt. We definitely want them on the medal stand with us.
Yeah, for sure.
To reach those types of heights.
Looks like you're getting close already. It looks like it. I know it might look different on the inside.
Step by step.
Step by step. I don't know.
I will say that. Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off there. What'd you say?
No, we look bigger than we are.
Oh, yeah. Well, some of these partnerships are impressive. Like when you see the US ski team wearing your brand, that's got to be a real good moment in life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Laura Piana's a partner to the brand. Ski team. We have two wonderful athletes in Travis Ganong and Ryan Cochran-Siegel. Ryan medaled in Beijing, silver medalist. So I think it's a reflection of, it probably comes back to what you said. I think what we're doing in some degree is novel. And I think we've identified an opportunity in the market. We found a global audience, but the people that we continue to sort of attract and are attracted to, somehow there is just a sense of gravity. You sort of can feel it and know it when you meet another like-minded person or organization. Sort of strange how quickly things click into place. We really have no right to be a partner to Laura Piana. They're owned by LVMH, Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy.
Sure. A big company, yeah.
Them in New York when I was actually making an investor pitch. They love what we're doing just at the outset, pure product people. And
sure.
Would you like to partner? Of course we would. And slowly but surely, that relationship develops. But we're forever grateful for that. But I think it really speaks to their innovative mentality, their curiosity, and other attributes which clearly set them apart from other brands. They don't have to partner with Alps Meters. They can partner with any brand they want in the world. Sure. But something that we've been doing has been attracted to them. We're clearly learning a lot from them. I think they're learning to a certain degree from us, but I very much respect that. Their willingness to look around the corner into these small niches or opportunities. That's a rarity considering their size.
Well, your brand is so authentic, and your products are so novel as well, right? You can see why other companies would look for that partnership, right? Because there's not a like-minded product or brand out there that really makes sense. So I think that really is following your vision right from the start of just believing in that thought that you had initially in your mind, saying, this is the brand, this is the product, and let's chase this down, because that could only come from your mind at that point.
Yeah, I think so. True. I think in folks have obviously put more paint on the walls. I definitely felt in my travels early wearing that vintage sweater, there was enough anecdotal stickiness with the response that it's not totally definitive, because there's a lot of execution risk in apparel, as you know, with your expertise. But I think in terms of the vision, I definitely had a more definitive feeling that there was enough of a global audience out there that we could build a legitimate business around, if not simply engage the user. But
do you feel like the customer base, because they have to be novel in their own right, your product is expensive, so there's very much a target market there. Do you feel like, I almost see like two people in a ski resort walking by each other and they're both wearing one of your products, almost nodding to each other or creating a community of
insiders.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's materializing?
I do. I think the community is really tight knit. I think it's certainly represented at the moment of a certain socioeconomic background, but it's definitely global, multicultural, international. We have a UK-based subsidiary, so we're shipping into Europe. We've shipped to Asia. So I think attitudinally, that's probably correct. I think there's also within our millennial set, so the cohort that you would think at first blush would be stretching to consume Alps Meters at our price points, but I think the search for quality and timelessness is definitely on in what has been a state of very disposable fashion. I think sustainability is playing a role in that, whereas we are either trying to use supplier innovation to build in a natural material complexion, which is one component of our unique selling proposition that has a lower water footprint, less of an environmental impact, but also we're trying to build, and this is the intention, I can't say that we realize this every time, but we're trying to build generational garments. So just from a durability factor, really focusing on quality and old world construction methods and techniques.
Sure.
And once again, kind of mining the technology from yesteryear.
Yeah.
I have sweaters and I still have that vintage piece from Order Sweden. Things were built to last. I think many brands are still building product that way. We want to be one of them, for sure. So even folks who ladder up, the quality is always impressed, the durability is always impressed, the utility is always impressed. We have plenty of improvements and tons of warts beyond that, but I think just so that singular value proposition to say that we're building something very high quality, we're hoping to ask for a fair price. We are a small company, so our cost basis is actually a lot higher than most people think it is.
Sure.
Without any kind of scaled economy. I think folks have understood that, are understanding it, and particularly within our VIP segment or the super fans, the consumption is rapid and very, very high.
Yeah. So back to this, high quality fabrics and just the general materials that are going into your product. How much are you involved in that? Like, obviously, every day there must be new fabrics coming out, be it heritage fabrics that have got new technology spin on it or whatever, and they're obviously coming out from different mills internationally. How do you keep your finger on the developments there, or is that something you'd also look for Exit 21 for help with?
Yeah, we have two wonderful product managers here as well with very high taste who have master's degrees within the fashion sector and a real sort of feel. I would say early on, like any founder, and particularly when it was a one-person entity, it was extremely hands-on.
Mm-hmm.
I would be sitting down with you as a designer, selecting fabrics, collaborating on what mixed materials might work. I think slowly what happened is the unique selling proposition for our product came into very clear focus. So at a very high level, the brand, our identity, we say that we believe in simple, timeless alpine traditions. We want to be a traditionalist. We want to be a historian and tell narratives of people, places, and memories connected to life in the mountains from the past, but also from a contemporary point of view. That fed product primarily in terms of the natural material selections that we wanted to be a very, very strong, if not heavy, aesthetic component, performance component in the pieces. Ultimately, that distilled itself down into what we've kind of described as a trifecta of our USP: natural materials, classic construction techniques, and contemporary technologies. With that menu set, with that well defined now, there are more folks that can contribute to different expressions of that USP. So I love product. I love being involved in product. I think with some of the other responsibilities that I have right now, I'm less involved. But even working, for example, with Laura Piana, we have shared very concretely that point of view with them. It needs to touch these three facets. That's the holy trinity of what makes an Alps Meters product an Alps Meters. And they've bought into it. But are we selecting fabrics from their library, which is like the Library of the Vatican for materials?
Yeah.
But they'll interpret our USP request, our unique selling proposition request, with different materials, with different ideas. And that's how I think we've created variety with gravity, if you will.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the product clarity, like offering that up to partners, is very helpful to them as well, right? Because they know exactly what to touch upon. Like, okay, in that Vatican of options, are like, okay, 90% of these don't make sense. Let's just focus on the 5 or 10%.
Yeah, people are pretty quick to, I mean, you wouldn't be surprised because you have a background in the space, but when you communicate at the top of the funnel in a formal, written manner with some degree of clarity, the creatives come off the mark. Like,
yeah.
I don't want to be. I don't have the background. I'm not the guy to pick this fiber or that. That's not an area of strength of mine. But sort of the idea, you know it when you see it. Everybody responds to the best selections with excitement. And most everybody knows what falls outside of the parameters of our USP, and that saves tons of time and energy because we're not digging any dry wells. We know very clearly what we want to achieve. We have a product called an Alpine rucksack. It's one of the only high performance backpacks out there made from waxed cotton, a combination of leather. The interior is fully waterproof and lined with a membrane. That kind of fusion is Alps Meters. It looks like it could have been plucked out of the 1920s from Chamonix Mont Blanc, but has a lot of contemporary characteristics. So building that institutional knowledge inside our company at Exit 21 and with partners, now it's just being amplified. We don't have to educate as much as we just need to get on board with the next great idea that's going to create another expression, another manifestation of that, singular point of view.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested in digging in because you said there was 2 product managers on your team, so they're employees of Alps Meters, and I'm interested to see how the separation of work between those 2 people on your team and the Exit 21 team in regards to roles and responsibilities. So obviously internally, if you came up with a new draft for a garment or you saw somebody wearing something, you're like, that looks pretty cool. Can we bring this into the Alps Meters collective? You talk with your 2 product managers first. Is that how it materializes and they develop a little bit more? Or
yeah, it's very, very intertwined. This is going to be much more simple than it is, but just for the audience, I think I often describe it as upstream and downstream.
Okay.
So Exit 21 is operating their own business. They have other brands in their ecosystem. They represent that sort of one-stop shop. It's turnkey. Now, we have a unique relationship with them, so they are, I would call it, ultra passionate about designing and working with Alps Meters, but really the top of the creative funnel, the creative direction for a season, the merchandising, the product ideas, the product briefs themselves are developed by myself and the product managers. So we'll sit there, for example, for last winter, and this is a concept that's still rising. For example, we wanted to revisit the narrative and the founding story of Western resort scene in the United States. Mm-hmm. So this is a very rags to riches tale of mining towns being sunk under the silver bust in the late 19th century, early 20th century. Ski trade arriving and then building these luxurious resorts. Park City is a perfect example of that. But it had a very sort of cowboy pioneering mentality, especially if you looked post-World War II with veterans from the United States, 10th Mountain Division coming back and founding mountains like Vail and Aspen. A lot of those were Coloradans who came back from the war to enact a life intertwined with their passion. We wanted to unpack that. We wanted to amplify. We wanted to bring it to market, and we came up with an idea called High West. And so High West has this very almost Ralph double RL set of textures, corduroys, and leathers, but really punched through our own alpine point of view. We do that at Alps Meters with the product team. That feeds product briefs. That package lands in Exit 21's lap.
Yeah.
And then they are really the product creators. They are the ones who are designing the pieces based on our verbal and written sketchwork.
Yes. Yeah. That's fascinating. I didn't know that that's how this would materialize. So in a way, you create the story, you create the feel, you're creating the brand, the authenticity around the brand, and then you're creating a brief around that. And then you challenge them, say, hey, take all this and see how close you can get. And I suppose then it's an iterative process, right? They're going to come back with a few different versions.
It's probably lack of, I don't know, I could be incorrect because it's such an iterative, fun process. It's probably not a factor of proximity. I mean, we place great trust in the designers. Mm-hmm. The designers aren't just the people sketching, they're the developers, they're folks who are really crafting the product. We don't want to look over their shoulder, hold their hand, because most often, I would say, in almost every case, the designer is coming up with a garment that exceeds the expectations in our limited non-design minds that lives on the brief. And then when we see things in a designer view, wow. So the designer, I think, on behalf of the brand, where a product is such a, whether a product's king or not, but it is a critical facet of how people perceive the brand. Of course, that's the designer's handwriting. That's not mine. It's not the product manager's. Yeah, they deserve, mountains of credit, as do the developers who are helping to make sure that the garments fit appropriately, that their performance characteristics are in tune. So that's a big piece. I can't say that the upstream process is any more important than the downstream process. I think the one critical thing is there needs to be an understanding and a really strong linkage between both. And that's where the magic happens.
And like any partnership, length of partnership matters, right? Because you both understand each other that much more after working with each other for, a prolonged period of time. You're not having to introduce Alps Meters every time you go in. Obviously, they're going to have team change, but, it's still the knowledge of your company is still very much instilled with theirs. I'm sure they're as committed in your brand as they almost are.
That's right. Yeah. No, I think just something that I'd like to build on with what you said is, trust is hard to come by. They're not a massive company either. So being able to trust in the process, trust in the vision, we have to trust their vision. They have feedback for us. They have a critical eye. They make recommendations. They're part of our team. The trust piece is key. And I think everybody makes that leap of faith in the hope that their relationships will have a very positive landing. We've had some that haven't for a variety of reasons, but sure. Yeah, when you're building up the trust, that just gets stronger and stronger, more solidified. The foundation is more concrete, and then you can do more. You can take more risk. You can go faster because you're not micromanaging work, and the division of labor becomes more segmented. We know what they do well. We know what we do well. That's reciprocated, so on and so forth.
I have two related questions. The first one is, I don't want to put you on the spot in regards to like minimum order size and that, but is it when you're getting involved in this business for the first time? That's obviously something that's pretty scary, right? In regards to
aspect, yeah,
right. Because manufacturers down the line, they're really only interested in the volume game, right? And they really no desire
to a certain extent.
It comes down to who your partner is again, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and they have bills to pay, but frightening. So I remember just wiring money, writing checks into the black hole early when I was by myself, and even after our first raise of capital among friends and families, I was doing what all stupid founders do, pulling money from places that I shouldn't, by saving accounts.
Sure.
Et cetera, to make sure that we can get from here to there and putting patches in place. And subsequently, we've had many supportive investors do the same on our behalf now. But that capital requirement and then the wrestling with those minimum order quantities is a massive, it's a chasm you've got to cross in the apparel sector, which unfortunately is a kind of significant barrier to entry. I think it's a very high hurdle often, almost just in terms of the Constitution. I mean, if my wife knew half of the things I've done, and she knows most of them, it would be, I don't know where the doghouse is, but I'd be a couple of moves from that. But it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge. That's where the financing capital requirement comes in. And we've always been behind the curve there. I think anyone in the space, unless you're really loaded up with VC capital, is behind the curve. But finding your way through that and navigating it is arduous.
Yeah. And even as you're scaling now, is having investment like that still important for the growth at this stage right now, or is it more just to get you up and running?
Yeah, no, critical. We're going to need more capital, and I think that the challenge with apparel in particular is you have a bunch of prepaid expenses. So, for example, Laura Piana is asking us to make a fabric buy for a collection that we want to deliver next year. Cash conversion is a nightmare. So we might lay out X amount of dollars and not report them until next November. That's where the financing comes in. We have a very, very lean venture. We're near break even. We're near break even because we have, I think, a smart positioning in an upscale market with a recession durable consumer and healthy margins to the most degree. But cash it's a heart attack every day here. It's not that different now than it was at inception in terms of the volatility. We had very, very, very shallow periods of cash. And then, in our peak season, cash flows with a little bit more ease. But then we're back to more inventory acquisition, looking at different debt facilities, which are not inexpensive. And I'm not a CFO. We're close to bringing the CFO finally on board because we think we've sort of reached a place where it's requirement and it's just become too complex, way above my pay grade. But
it makes you sleep better at night as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, very interesting. So the second question is, you touched upon it there with the manufacturers. Are they relationships that you have directly yourself, or again, is that more of an Exit 21 where you would leverage?
Both. In some cases, Exit 21 held the primary relationship, and then we've met with the owners to introduce ourselves. In other cases, my network, we've brought factories to the table and introduced Exit 21 to them. That I think is a big advantage, where back in that tree of trust, the rising tide lifts all ships. So in aggregate, their relationships meet our relationships. We're able to build more diversification in the supply chain, create more stability, and ensure that the products we want to create will have the right capabilities behind them.
Yeah. Which there you're building the whole ecosystem, right? You're sending opportunities in all different directions. So to your point, rising tide.
Yeah.
Rising tide. Yeah. I just actually wouldn't mind going back to the minimum orders as well. Do you notice over time, like every year that passes by with the more manufacturing options that come online, that those minimum orders are decreasing to more manageable for a startup right now? Or do you feel like they're still pretty high and it's,
I think just through COVID and whether we're in a recession or not, we haven't experienced that. I simply because I think the global economic atmosphere is not great. Inflation is incredibly high, and I think everybody in the supply chain is trying to look to pass costs on to the other links in the chain, and sometimes that all just goes downstream and lands in our lap.
Yeah,
and we're basically a price taker in that regard. Outside of the relationship and asking for help where we can. But I think there are many boutique factories that are willing to work under lower MOQs, albeit the cost basis might be a little bit higher. So
sure.
I think there's a fit out there for everybody. Finding it is probably more of the hard part.
Yeah, exactly. And terms, to your point earlier, is a big deal, right? The more, if you pull a 90-day or 120-day, well, that takes a lot of pressure off.
That's
And as
right.
close to you get to selling the product as you can
That's
to
right.
having to pay for the other side.
Yep.
Something that makes sense. So, a company of your side, how many manufacturing relationships would you have? How many different companies would you be using?
5 or 6.
Okay, and they would specialize in different parts. You might have a leather company.
Yeah, so we have a knitwear and an outerwear factory in Italy. That's via Loro Piana, brokered via Loro Piana and some of their agents. We have a mainline knitwear factory here domestically in the U.S. And then we have a group in Asia that makes both sportswear and knitwear, and then what I would call kind of a mainline outerwear factory in Vietnam.
Okay. Globally spread.
Globally spread, you got to go where the expertise is.
Yeah.
The mainline outerwear factory makes beautiful technical brands such as Stone Island, Moncler. Obviously, being a part of the Loro Piana family in Italy has us in the right places, working with the right mills and the right
100%.
high quality, not inexpensive manufacturers, but pure luxury that we sell to department stores like Harrods. And then, we're very curious about onshoring. We've developed a great factory relationship here that's in its early stages. So that's another startup that we're a part of. We're not an investor, but we want to be a partner to this new factory, grow with them. And the relationships that we've developed to date have been phenomenal. I can say, there have been times where we have not been the best partner, simply because of cash turbulence, our size. Those are things that we're constantly trying to improve. I'm pleased to say that the majority of the relationships have always been stable, and we've fought to keep those partnerships above board, have stretched to meet minimums, have stretched to meet payments. But like any relationship, we're not perfect, they're not perfect, and it takes two to tango.
Yeah, and it's hard, right? What you're doing right now is hard.
Yeah, definitely. I want to go back to what I would have done differently, but there are some easier entrepreneurial choices, perhaps. I think every entrepreneurial journey, I'm being, I guess, a little bit cheeky, but every entrepreneurial journey is hard. I think there are some kinks within apparel and retail from that cash flow standpoint that make it particularly challenging to lift off. And then if you look at the input cost to scale, your inventory is one of them.
Yeah,
Product is the other. Those are probably two of our heaviest OpEx items.
Yeah.
And you can't get to the next level without feeding those. So
actually, on the retail side, would most of your sales be through your own, from your own website, through your own channels, or is it mostly?
We started digitally native, but always wanted to be omni-channel, particularly because the garments are so tactile. You've got to touch them. Price value really resonates. So we sell in every major mountain town here in the United States. We've had conversations with different department stores. We have our own freestanding store at the St. Regis Hotel in Deer Valley. Pre-COVID, we had a shop on Newbury Street in Boston.
Oh, yes.
We're going to be shop-in-shops with a new hospitality venture called Gravity House, which is building upscale lodgings in major Colorado towns right now. I think they've got a property in Tahoe. So we love the regional effect, for sure. Harrods is one of our prime partners in the UK, where the garments really sit well on the floor next to other luxury brands, Belstaff, etc. So we're somewhat channel agnostic. We want to be in the channels where our customers are engaging, where they're shopping, where they're prospecting.
Meet them where they are.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and that's going to change. I mean, for all everybody knows, it's going to be VR, AR, and in the metaverse in the future, and we'll have to be there.
Yeah, figure out an option there with everybody else. So the last segment, I'd love to cover, another thing I think you do very well is the brand, and also related to that, the visual imagery, right? There's images of the product, including the models that you pick. It's aspirational. It's timeless. It very much talks to your brand itself. Is that something that you own itself, even down to creation of the Alps Meters logo, and the initial product images, and all the asset, and all the creative that goes along with that?
I think it's there are other folks bringing that to life with those kind of core competencies. The individuals who designed our logo are fast friends of mine, Allison Waters Doherty and Adam Larson. They had they spun out of really exceptional advertising agency lives. They're both brand creators, entrepreneurs, brand directors, and they were helpful. They created the Alps Meters logo based on input, ideas, and feelings that I had. And what's so impressive to me about the logo is if you read any business school book, I think the FedEx logo has a variety of different layers to it, the way that it's structured, the symbolism, the subtlety of the negative space. There's an arrow in there between Fed and the word X. There were a lot of impressions, powerful impressions that logo creates consciously and subconsciously. I think the Alps Meters logo has very similar layers. If you take the time to, expound on that, that's probably some design class waiting to happen for Adam Larson to teach. But there's symmetry. There are the letters.
Yes,
There is an atmosphere that's created. There's a mountain if you look very closely. So
exactly.
That's so far afield from my abilities and what Allison and Adam created for us. We will forever be grateful for. In terms of the imagery, it's the same. One of our product managers acts as one of our producers. We have a fantastic creative on the brand side who helps with video. But when I mentioned that High West concept, I think one of the things, if we do anything well from a product marketing perspective, is product marketing the same for us. So that story that we tell simply infects the photography production that we want to create. So in the instance of High West, we met with really storied Western skiers, pioneers who were, early in Park City. We captured footage on a ranch and on Main Street in Park City, and less than pushing product, we wanted to make sure that atmosphere could be realized with a really wonderful narrative and voiceover. We have a great investor based in Dallas, Texas, with a really Western drawl.
Okay.
We tapped him for the voiceover. But that cascades from that very first kind of creative conversation. And we're small enough where almost everybody in the company is in the room.
Yes.
So you don't have to pass the message along. The message really hits one time.
Yeah, for sure.
Folks understand what it is we're trying to create. And then whether it's in photo, video, or otherwise, those mediums just come to life the way the designer designs the product.
Yeah, and the actual execution. So when you're doing a photo shoot, is that through an agency or would you do that internally?
No, we do it in-house.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah, I mean, we want to keep that very, very intimate. We've had external supporters, add more firepower and capacity, but the advantage of, for example, one of our brand creative directors, and this is just classic startup, moonlights as a product director.
Perfect.
So she's in the room helping us incept the new big idea. She's really at the forefront of creating that world. And then by the time we need to create the photo production, the brief for that particular event is already written, and she's part of it. So there's nothing lost in translation. It's almost everything's sort of instantly institutionalized.
Yeah, that's the benefit of having a business at the size it is, right? There's no separation.
Yeah.
It's the same brain that's doing both sides.
Correct.
Right? And it's impressive with Exit 21 that you've actually been able to share that even though it's an external company, right? Because you're so close with it.
Yeah. Agree. Fully agree.
So any other advice, somebody starting off right now, you mentioned one pitfall, any other top of mind saying, don't do this, don't do that?
I think quite the opposite. I remember leaving Puma Carrying and walking around. I can't remember where I was. I could have been in Paris at the time, taking a deep breath and sort of that rush of, definitely fear, definitely anxiety hitting me very hard. But I think for folks like us, I mean, my wife is Indian. My mother-in-law lives with us. She is a doctor from India. She came here, didn't speak the language, immigrant mentality. My father's an Albanian immigrant. We have total first world problems. So I think the one piece of advice, if there is any, and I'm not smart enough to give it. I really try to keep a big beginner's mentality. I don't know a lot of things, and I'm still learning in Alps Meters, but the things that I kind of feel are, in the grand scheme of things, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
You're not going to suffer that much, although the commitments and the obligations are real. But if you zoom out, and I looked at my parents and my mother-in-law and my father-in-law all the time, their journey, I don't know if I could have done that and come here and not speak the language and be as successful as they are. That's a real hardship. But knowing that, I think it makes it a lot easier to just give it a go. I think there'll be more risks not giving it a go than trying it on. And the hardest thing is just to get started and embrace that forthcoming journey. I think the other thing that I would offer very quickly, I haven't read the book, but I'm going to get it. I read in a McKinsey article that there's a book called The Infinite Game, and it really resonated with me, just the title, because I think entrepreneurship is a bit of an infinite game. It's not finite. If you have a zero-sum mentality, one day to the next, there are failures galore that could arrest you, stop you, depress you. If you think that the idea is just to show up every day and keep the plate spinning for as long as you can, that centrifugal force ultimately just takes over.
Takes over.
It's really very interesting to think of things like that. So beginner's mentality, this idea of the infinite game, just stretching things out through difficulty and somehow maintaining the semblance of composure. Not easy, but showing up every day, I legitimately, a friend of mine told me, is half the battle, and I think that is true. That is legitimately true. As long as you can keep that plate spinning by hell or high water, doesn't matter how fast or slow it is spinning, just keep it going. Even if it's at a glacial pace, you're in the game. Stay in the game.
Yeah. And you never know how you're going to wake up each morning. Some days are good days, some days not so good days. Energy high, low energy. So
that's right.
That picture in your mind of just trying to keep that plate turning a little faster.
Yeah, and the perspective is very helpful. It'll be okay. We're living in a middle class environment, and we have means and support that other folks do not have. I'm very fortunate to have had the support mechanisms that I have had. I've taken a lot of risk. That is for sure, maybe more so than I would have liked to at the outset, and you just keep doubling down. But big picture, definitely worth the attempt.
I can't think of a better way to close this out. That was beautiful.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Like I say, you've been an inspiration to me. I've been cheering you on for a number of years right now, and I just wish you the very best. And
thank you.
It'd be pretty cool if you're open to it, to check back in, and a little bit further down the road, I can check in, things are going, and you can share some of your stories. I can share some progress. It'd be great.
Yeah, wonderful. Let's count on it.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Lou.
Okay. Take care.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Bye. Hope that you all enjoyed and got as much value from that conversation with Lou as I did. In the coming episodes, I'm going to have similar conversations with others who have also taken action on their inner voice and created their own clothing. I'll look for future inspiration and also additional practical guidance on how they did so. But for now, if there's any way that I can help any of you in your endeavors, please reach out and introduce yourself. For now, goodbye.